The Montana wilderness is a place of raw beauty and unforgiving challenges, a realm where survival often depends on instinct, timing, and the smallest acts of mercy. Dr. Amanda Mitchell had spent years in this rugged landscape, healing animals and restoring balance between humans and wildlife. But nothing could prepare her for what unfolded one frosty October morning. When Amanda followed her loyal German shepherd Max off the beaten trail, she stumbled upon a confrontation that made her heart race. A hunter, a raised rifle, and a tiny bobcat cub trembling at the edge of a fallen log. The hunter had his reasons, and the law might have been on his side. But what happened next defied logic, ignited a battle of compassion versus instinct, and set off a chain of events that would ripple across lives, species, and generations. Sometimes, a single moment changes everything. This is the story of courage, survival, and a bond so profound it bridged the chasm between wild and tame. What began with a single act of protection would grow into a legacy that no one could have predicted.
The Montana wilderness held its breath on that fateful October morning, frost crystallizing on fallen leaves and morning mist clinging to the ancient pines like gossamer veils. Dr. Amanda Mitchell stood on her cabin's worn porch, coffee mug warming her weathered hands as she surveyed the landscape she'd called home for the past 15 years. At 52, the streaks of silver in her dark hair matched the morning frost, earned through years of dedication to the wildlife and domestic animals of Pine Ridge County. The loss of her husband, Thomas, 5 years ago in a wildlife rescue gone wrong still carved an empty space in her heart. He'd been her partner in both life and work, sharing her dream of opening a veterinary clinic in this remote corner of Montana. The memory of that terrible day, when a trapped bear they were trying to help had lashed out in panic, remained a shadow that sometimes darkened even the brightest mornings. But she wasn't alone. Max, her loyal German shepherd, pressed against her leg, his warm presence a constant reminder that life continued to offer gifts even after devastating loss. She'd found him 8 years ago, a trembling puppy in an abandoned farm property, half-starved but still wagging his tail at the sight of her. Thomas had been the one to suggest naming him Max, saying the puppy's oversized paws promised he'd grow into it. "Ready for our morning rounds, boy?" Amanda asked, setting down her mug and reaching for her well-worn hiking boots. Max's intelligent brown eyes watched her every move, his partially gray muzzle giving him an air of wisdom that matched his gentle nature. Despite his advancing years, he remained her most valuable assistant, possessing an almost supernatural ability to sense when an animal was in distress. The clinic itself was a testament to resilience, built from Thomas's dreams and Amanda's determination to honor his memory. The main cabin had been transformed into a state-of-the-art veterinary facility, while a separate rehabilitation wing housed injured wildlife until they could return to their natural habitat. Local ranchers, hunters, and nature enthusiasts had all come to respect Dr. Mitchell's dedication to maintaining the delicate balance between human development and wildlife preservation. As they set out on their usual trail, Amanda's mind wandered to the increasing reports of aggressive hunting in the area. The recent economic downturn had pushed more people toward hunting for subsistence rather than sport, and not all of them respected the regulations designed to protect vulnerable species. She treated more gunshot wounds in the past month than in the previous year combined. Max trotted ahead, his nose working the morning air with professional dedication. Though his pace had slowed slightly with age, his senses remained razor-sharp. They'd covered about 2 miles of their usual 5-mile circuit when Max suddenly stiffened, his ears snapping forward and his body becoming preternaturally still. Before Amanda could process the change, Max bolted off the trail, disappearing into the dense underbrush. Her heart lurched. This wasn't his usual enthusiastic pursuit of an interesting scent. This was different, urgent in a way that sent cold fingers of dread down her spine. "Max," she called out, already moving to follow. The fresh morning air that had felt so invigorating moments ago now seemed to carry an ominous weight. Pushing through the thick vegetation, she could hear Max's barking growing more intense, more demanding. It was the same tone he'd used the day they'd found an injured eagle tangled in illegal hunting wire. a sound that meant trouble needed immediate attention. The scene that greeted her as she broke through the final barrier of branches stopped her heart for a moment. 30 yards ahead stood a man in full hunting gear, his rifle raised and steady, aimed at something near a fallen log. Max had positioned himself between the hunter and his target. His normally friendly demeanor transformed into a protective fury that made him appear twice his size. Amanda's trained eye quickly took in the details of the situation, and her blood ran cold when she spotted what the hunter had in his sights. A bobcat cub, no more than 4 months old, huddled against the massive fallen log. Its spotted fur was matted with mud and what appeared to be blood, its small frame showing clear signs of malnutrition. But what struck Amanda most was the terror in its eyes. Eyes that seemed too knowing, too haunted for such a young creature. "Stop!" Amanda's voice carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed, sharp enough to make the hunter's head turn though his rifle remained trained on the cub. "Lower your weapon immediately." The hunter's jaw tightened, his fingers still resting on the trigger. "This is legal hunting territory, lady. And this cat's been killing livestock at the Peterson farm." Amanda took a careful step forward, her mind racing. The Petersons had indeed reported livestock losses, but she'd examined the kills herself. That's impossible. The predator taking the Petersons' sheep is a full-grown mountain lion. This is a juvenile bobcat, barely weaned. Look at its size. Max's barking intensified, and Amanda could see the hunter's patience wearing thin. The man adjusted his grip on the rifle, his face hardening. "Don't interfere with legal hunting, ma'am. I've got my permits." "I'm Dr. Mitchell, the county veterinarian," Amanda responded, taking another measured step forward. "That cub's protected under wildlife regulations. It's too young to be alone. Something must have happened to its mother. It needs rehabilitation, not execution." The mention of her name caused a flicker of recognition in the hunter's eyes. Amanda was well known in the community, respected even by those who didn't always agree with her conservation efforts. But something in his stance told her he wasn't going to back down easily. "Been tracking this cat family for days," he growled. "Mother's already gone. Found her caught in one of my traps yesterday. Was a mercy killing." His words carried no remorse, only irritation at being challenged. The revelation hit Amanda like a physical blow. No wonder the cub was in such poor condition, orphaned, traumatized, and likely having witnessed its mother's death. The surge of anger that rose in her chest was all too familiar, reminiscent of the helpless rage she'd felt after losing Thomas. What happened next seemed to unfold in terrible slow motion. The cub, perhaps sensing a shift in the tension around it, made a desperate move to flee. The hunter's finger tightened on the trigger, and Max, loyal, brave Max, launched himself forward with a speed that defied his years. The crack of the rifle split the morning like thunder, and Amanda's scream of "Max" merged with the echoing report. Her faithful companion stumbled but didn't fall, blood immediately darkening his shoulder fur. Despite the wound, he maintained his position between the hunter and the cub, his growl now carrying a note of pain that tore at Amanda's heart. "Oh God," the hunter breathed, lowering his rifle as the reality of what he'd done sank in. "I didn't mean to." "Put the weapon down." Amanda's voice cracked like a whip as she rushed forward. "Back away now." Whether it was the authority in her tone or the growing horror in his eyes, the hunter complied, laying his rifle on the ground and taking several steps backward. Amanda's hands were already moving to her emergency medical kit as she reached Max's side. The bullet had torn through his shoulder muscle, missing bone by centimeters, but leaving a serious wound that pumped blood onto the forest floor. Throughout her examination, Max remained focused on the bobcat cub, which had pressed itself into the smallest possible space against the log, trembling but making no attempt to run. "I'm so sorry," the hunter stammered, his face ashen. "I never meant to shoot a dog." Amanda's response was arctic cold. "No, you just meant to shoot an orphan cub whose mother you already killed. Get out of here, now. And if I ever catch you hunting juveniles or using illegal traps again, I'll make sure every relevant authority knows about it." The man retreated, leaving his rifle behind in his haste to escape the scene. Amanda's attention was divided between Max's wound and the terrified cub, her mind racing through options. The cub was clearly in need of immediate medical attention, but Max's injury took priority. Yet when she tried to help Max stand, he refused to move until she had secured the cub. Using her jacket and years of experience handling injured wildlife, Amanda managed to carefully contain the frightened bobcat. Only then did Max allow her to help him rise, though every step clearly caused him pain. The journey back to the clinic was slow and difficult, marked by Max's labored breathing and the occasional muffled sound from the bundle containing the cub. The next several hours passed in a blur of focused medical work. Amanda treated Max's wound with trembling hands, her professional detachment warring with personal anguish. The bullet had passed clean through, and while recovery would take weeks, he would heal completely with proper care. She noticed that even under anesthesia, Max's body remained oriented toward where she had temporarily housed the bobcat cub. The cub, which Amanda later confirmed to be female, was in worse condition than initially apparent. Besides severe malnutrition and dehydration, she had multiple infected scratches, likely from desperately trying to reach her trapped mother. The thought of what the young creature had endured, watching her mother suffer in a trap, then witnessing her death, filled Amanda with a profound sadness. As night fell, Amanda sat on the floor beside Max's bed in her living room, one hand resting gently on his good shoulder while she made calls to wildlife rehabilitation centers across 3 states. Each call brought the same response. They were at capacity, dealing with an unusually high number of orphaned animals before winter. "Looks like you're stuck with me," she told the cub, who watched her with wary golden eyes from the safety of a recovery kennel. She named her Luna, inspired by the perfect circular marking around her right eye that resembled a full moon. The next few weeks developed into a careful routine. Amanda divided her time between her regular patients, Max's recovery, and Luna's rehabilitation. To her amazement, Max's protective instinct toward Luna never wavered. As soon as he was strong enough to move around, he took to lying near her enclosure, watching with intense interest as she grew stronger under Amanda's care. Luna's transformation was remarkable. As proper nutrition and medical care helped her recover, her true personality began to emerge. She remained appropriately wild. Amanda was careful not to habituate her to human presence, but she showed an unusual tolerance for Max's presence. Sometimes, Amanda would find them appearing to communicate through the safety glass, predator and protector sharing some secret understanding. The bond between them reminded Amanda of her relationship with Thomas, unlikely partners brought together by a shared passion for helping animals. She found herself telling Luna stories about him during their feeding times, about his dream of creating a sanctuary where wildlife and humans could coexist peacefully. Sometimes, she could swear the young bobcat was actually listening. As winter approached, Luna's strength returned fully, and Amanda knew she would soon have to release her. She'd identified a perfect location deep in the national forest, far from hunting areas but rich in natural prey. The thought of letting Luna go created an unexpected ache in her chest, but she knew it was necessary. The morning of the release dawned bitter cold, with fresh snow blanketing the landscape. As Amanda loaded Luna's transport cage into her truck, she noticed Max watching intently, his injury healed but marked by a slight scar beneath his fur. He took his place in the passenger seat with unusual solemnity, eyes fixed on the cage in the back. The drive to the release site was silent except for the crunch of snow under the truck's tires. Amanda had chosen a spot nearly 20 miles from any human settlement, where recent surveys had shown a healthy rabbit population and plenty of natural shelter. As she carried the transport cage through the snow, Max followed close behind, his paws falling precisely in her tracks. The moment of release was both beautiful and heart-wrenching. Luna emerged from the cage with natural caution, her healthy fur gleaming in the winter sunshine. She took several steps into the fresh snow, then turned to look back at Max and Amanda. For a long moment, she stood still, her golden eyes moving between them as if memorizing their features. Then, with a graceful bound that showed no trace of her previous injuries, she disappeared into the forest. Amanda wiped tears from her cheeks, surprised by the depth of her emotion. Max remained sitting in the snow, watching the spot where Luna had vanished, until Amanda gently tugged his collar. "Come on, boy. She needs to be wild now." But Luna had other ideas. 3 days later, as Amanda and Max sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold. Movement at the forest's edge caught their attention. There stood Luna, healthy and confident, watching them. From that day forward, she became a regular visitor, never fully tame, but somehow bridging the gap between wild and companion. Years passed, and Luna's visits became an integral part of their lives. She would appear silently at the forest's edge, sometimes leaving tracks in the snow right up to the porch, other times watching from a distance as Max and Amanda took their morning walks. As Max aged, slowing but never losing his dignity, Luna's visits seemed to increase in frequency, as if she somehow understood that time with her savior was precious. The winter of Max's 13th year brought changes that Amanda had been dreading. Her faithful companion's age began to show more prominently. His muzzle now completely gray, his steps slower, though his spirit remained unchanged. Luna seemed to sense the shift, her visits becoming more frequent, often staying within sight of the cabin for hours at a time. The morning Max passed away was brutally cold, with fresh snow falling in heavy flakes. Amanda found him in his favorite spot by the fireplace, looking peaceful but still, his brave heart finally at rest. As she sat on the porch that evening, grief overwhelming her, she noticed something remarkable. Bobcat tracks circled the entire cabin, as if Luna had maintained a silent vigil through the night. As twilight deepened the shadows, Luna emerged from the trees and did something unprecedented. She walked directly up to the porch steps. Sitting there in the gathering dusk, her magnificent adult form a far cry from the scrawny cub Max had saved, she met Amanda's eyes with an intelligence that spoke of understanding beyond human comprehension. In that moment, Amanda felt a connection to all she had lost and all she had gained. Thomas's dream of harmony between humans and wildlife, Max's unwavering loyalty and courage, and Luna's remarkable ability to bridge two worlds. The Bobcat remained for several minutes before melting away into the darkness, leaving Amanda with an unexpected sense of peace. 3 months later, Amanda was startled by scratching at her clinic door before dawn. Opening it, she found Luna waiting, but she wasn't alone. Behind her, struggling to walk, was a young fox kit with an injured leg. Luna waited until Amanda moved to help the kit, then disappeared into the forest, leaving behind a legacy that would continue to unfold. This became a pattern. Luna would occasionally appear with injured wildlife, leading Amanda to animals in need of help. It was as if she had taken up Max's mission, becoming a guardian of the forest in her own unique way. The story of Max, Luna, and Amanda spread throughout the community, touching hearts and changing minds about the relationship between humans and wildlife. Local hunters, moved by the tale, established a protected zone around Amanda's property. The Peterson family, learning the full story of the orphan cub, became advocates for ethical hunting practices and helped fund a wildlife rehabilitation center on Amanda's property, finally fulfilling Thomas's dream of a true sanctuary. Years passed, and Amanda would often sit on her porch at sunset, watching the forest edge. Sometimes she would catch glimpses of Luna, now teaching her own cubs to hunt in the shadows of the trees. The cubs carried distinctive markings that reminded Amanda of their mother's unique moon-shaped eye patch, a living legacy of love and protection spanning species and generations.